So I had a meeting this morning.
Yeah.
As you know, I have a house project I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
By house project, I'm building a house. And we hired some people to do different things. So we have our general contractor, and then we have designers. And the designers are going in and helping us, like, with the tile and the lights and the floor details and making sure the framing, like, lines up in a way where things are flush and aligned and it looks good. That's great. What I failed to realize was we have conversations with our GC,
Yeah.
and then we have conversations with the designer. So the designers put in all this work, and the GC puts in all this work.
Mm-hmm.
And then today we were like, let's unify. Today's unification day.
Oh, no.
So we sit down, and the meeting was only scheduled for like an hour.
Yeah.
And we're like, the designers have all these drawings of these things that we wanted them to do, and blah, 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 blah. And the GC is like, well, you have a beam going through here. And it's like, so it throws off the entire thing. Or he'll be like, well, yeah, this door doesn't lay out this way because there's a structural element here, and you can't do that with this, or you can do that with this, and blah, blah, blah. So we literally sat down, and we're all excited. We have like these photos that we're like, yes, like this is going to be awesome. And then we like sit down, and then it's basically like I don't want to say a meltdown argument for an hour and a half, but it was us mediating, like, between the two sides of like well, we want this tile here so it looks like this. Well, that's not possible, or that's going to cost more money because of this, or I'm going to have to build this thing over here. And then like Kaylee and I are literally just sitting there like eating donuts and like having coffee and just like making curates while we're like going through all of this.
At least you had snacks.
We had snacks. But I'm just like, holy crap, like there is so much going on right now, and I don't even know what people are talking about. And
Yeah.
they're like, well, what do you think about this and the softening detail over here if we pull the paneling through this section? And I'm like, guys, like, can you just like do it? And this takes me back to last time when we were having the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Your money rules about keeping things easy,
Keeping things simple.
keeping things simple.
Yeah.
And I wonder, sometimes you bring people into your life to make things simple. Now, no one, I think, would say that building a house is a simple thing.
No.
But with that being said, I do think at some point they're going to get along. They're going to chisel through each other's walls. And on the other side, it's going to be glorious.
I would lower your expectations.
That's probably fair.
I mean, it's funny because I've talked to you because we did our kitchen renovation. What was that, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
And I remember saying, don't use the designer I used, which you didn't.
No.
But I said, don't use the designer I used. The designer was horrible or whatever. And my knocks on the designer, among the many, one was that he didn't seem to factor everything in like a general contractor would, right? Or like he made assumptions, and then we had the same situation where the designer and the general contractor were butting heads and pointing fingers and blaming each other, not just in one meeting, but throughout the process.
The entire thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's when I say lower expectations. This doesn't necessarily get to be a one-time only. So it could be.
I doubt it.
But it's funny because I feel like the only way to prevent this is to have it coordinated from the start. Like they should be working together the entire time.
100%. And this is like one thing I noticed really clearly on is we get these renderings and the designs look like unbelievable. We're like, this is going to be sick. And then I show it to Steve, and Steve's like...
Steve's the contractor.
Yeah. And Steve's like, oh, what are you thinking? And I'm like, you guys should talk. Yeah. So like we're leaving there, and we're heading out for the meeting because it's already over. Yeah. And I was like, guys, I got to go. Like, see you guys later. I'll leave you guys to it. And, the GC was like, oh, well, can we have a few meetings? Because we talked about a lot today. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But I think you guys should go to coffee.
Yeah, you guys talk first.
So I'm like setting them up on a date, like a blind date. Yeah. Because I'm like, you guys need to become best friends. Yeah. And when you guys are friends, things are going to be great. But there's synergies between things. And I was thinking about this on my way over here, because tying this into client situations, like coordination, like is everything. Yeah. And whether we're working with like a wholesaler on investments, or a CPA on tax front, or an estate planning attorney on the actual estate plan, or any sort of legacy planning. Yeah. Like if people don't play well in the sandbox together, then that leads to a rough client experience.
I agree with you. And I think actually it goes just like one step beyond that. It's how your brain works too. Like if the problem with your designer and your contractor is their brains don't work the same way. So they're not anticipating the same problems. We're doing just a small it's a relatively small project. We're not building a house. We're just doing a deck or 3-season porch, like renovation. We're not even, I was thinking, I'm like, did we pull permits? Do we need to pull permits? We didn't, I don't know if that happened or not. But
we'll let him deal with that.
Yeah. Welcome to the Compound Growth Podcast with Colin and Wheeler, where we talk all things growth, from financial growth to career growth, personal development to societal progress. We explore how each layer builds on the next, compounding over time to shape who we become. Each week, we break down complex ideas and emerging trends into clear, actionable insights. Because growth isn't just about numbers, it's about understanding the world and our place in it. The information in this material is for general information only, and is not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Investment advice offered through Integrated Partners, doing business as Ko-Fi Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor. Integrated Partners does not provide legal, tax, mortgage advice or services. Please consult your legal tax advisor regarding your specific situation. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. The economic forecasts set forth in this material may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that the strategies promoted will be successful.
To reflect back for the people that don't know the story about the Boston architect.
Yeah.
So I was interviewing people to help us with the house, and I had a conversation with a gentleman in a firm that was out of our price range, but we just had a chat. And he was saying like the most valuable thing you can do in terms of planning, not just your home, but also like your future life, is to sit down and envision what your perfect day is.
Yeah.
So he was like, when you sit down or when we sit down with our clients, we hand them all a diary. And you and your wife do it separately, and we even give one to the kids.
Right.
And he goes, I want you to wake up every day and imagine what it feels like to go through your house. He was like, when you wake up, what's the first thing you look at? What side of the bed do you get on? Do you turn on a light? Where is the light switch? Do you walk to the bathroom first? Do you go into the kitchen? Are you going to wake up kids? Do you let the dog out? Where does your dog sleep? And he was like, that's your morning routine. What does the afternoon look like? Are you going out and doing stuff? Or do you have dinner? Do you have friends over? Where are you having them over? Are you playing in a pool? Are you chilling in the living room playing games? And I'm like, wow, that is such a good exercise, because as you think about your perfect day, you could be that way with your house. But it's the same thing with clients in retirement too.
Yeah.
People are always like, well, when do you want to retire? Maybe the question should be, what does your retirement actually look like? People always say the same thing. It's always like, well, I want to travel more, and I want to do more golf, or I want to spend more time with the grandkids. But like, what does it actually look like?
It's a really good point. And I do think, though, when I'm just hearing you rattle off everything, I had two thoughts. One is it's a really good thing my child didn't fill out a diary of what a home renovation should look like.
I'd hop on a slide into a ball pit.
How did you know? That's exactly what she was going to say.
My diary would be very similar.
But also, I feel like it's overwhelming, right? Like if you're a client and we're asking these, well, we wouldn't do it that way. But if you're asking these questions of a client, like, I think they're really worthwhile questions. You shouldn't have immediate answers, right? It's go fill out that diary at home, right?
Yeah, well, it's like the art of war, everything's won or lost in the planning. Mm-hmm. And if you can like come up with a really great plan for whatever it is, whether it's a house or a vacation or retirement or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like that's going to be super valuable. At least I know it has been for me.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's nice when you have that opportunity to think things through.
Yeah.
I feel like slowing down and pausing to think things through can be so valuable, because otherwise you have a lot of unintended consequences. And that's what I feel like my life is full of, is unintended consequences. And I did not think all these steps. I'm learning chess. I'm learning to play chess.
I love chess. I play, as you know, a lot. But
right, yeah. So I get the value of thinking a couple of steps ahead and like maybe training your brain to think that way. but I still feel like there's natural, like it's, at 43, almost 44 years old here. I think, yeah, it's a little late in the game to be retraining my brain to think that way. I feel like you should like learn chess when you're 3, and maybe that will help you think about unintended or intended consequences a little bit more thoroughly.
Maybe, yeah, maybe it's better to have the kind of the framework in the beginning, but it's almost like when we talked with Andre, when she came in, she talked about the input to ChatGPT,
Right.
and like what outcome do you want?
Yeah.
And if you know what outcome you are trying to get to, it's much easier to form a plan.
Yeah, but I think that one of my thoughts during that conversation was that it's an oversimplification. Like the thought that we get to control the outcome, like we're not God creatures, like we don't get to control the outcome. We have intended outcomes. We have like, here's what we're hoping will happen. But I feel like, and this transitions into the conversation that we're having today, so much of what's happening in our country and in our economy and the state of the world that we're living in right now is the result of unintended consequences. And when you're taking time to think things through, that can help. But I feel like frequently the best intentions lead to unexpected, certainly unintended consequences.
Most communistic parties, most genocides, most horrible things that happen in the world started with great intentions.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Some of those genocides, Colin, I'm not sure.
I guess it depends on your opinion of a good outcome.
Right.
And that's the thing. We're often living in other people's good ideas.
Well, that's what I think makes it so overwhelming and so, I think, suffocating to a degree, because and this is why when I was a kid, I was like, when I learned about our political system and like
how little control you have,
I have the fact that we have the electoral college, and like I can vote how I want to vote, right? And you can vote the same way, and like 38 of my friends can vote the same way, but only one actually gets to make the real vote.
Yeah.
So I'm oversimplifying that as well, but it feels more and more and more and more and more that everything is out of my control. And then my reaction to that was to retreat from it to a degree. It was like, well, I'll focus on what I can control, right?
Yeah.
And try to make a difference in the like little areas where I can. And now that's feeling more like it's not enough.
What I will say is, historically speaking, looking back at my life, whenever I've put a plan in place to try to achieve something, it's typically happened. And sometimes to the extent of even more so than what I had planned. Oftentimes, like if I go down a road and if I have expectations of X, sometimes I'll get Y, and Y is even better. So I have found that where I fail the most is when I don't have a plan. It's like, what's that saying? If you don't have a plan to fail.
Sure.
So if you don't have a plan, then that's like kind of, to me, where I always fall astray. But whenever Kaylee or I have put some sort of plan in place, while it may not be exact, it does generally create a guideline and a road that we tend to go down.
Well, I think it
creates action.
Yeah. One of my favorite little like phrases right now is directionally accurate, right? Like it gets you
very
moving,
much so,
right? Like you have to start the journey. You can't control the destination necessarily, but you can, control some aspects of the journey.
Yeah, it's like golf. Like if you're aiming down the fairway, it may not land in the fairway, but it should be close. But don't aim behind you.
Yeah. I was playing hockey once with a client, actually, and he was like, hey, if you want the puck to go over there, you should aim your stick in that direction. I was like, oh, really? Is that what I should do? I should just like aim. Like, yes, thank you for telling me that. Very logical.
I recognize I didn't aim.
I accept your criticism of my passing ability. But yeah, I think that's what's tough is that it's not just your plan. It's not just my plan, right? Like it's a nation of millions, right? And nobody has the same plan.
This is my big problem with politics, though, is I don't enjoy watching the news and I don't enjoy getting into it because I just recognize I can't control that much.
Sure.
Versus like a house.
Yeah.
Like I can control that. Like, even if people don't get along, you can make changes, but
you can impact it more. I don't know if control is even the right word. It's like you can make an impact on it.
You can make a significant impact on the destination that you're trying to get to.
Right.
Versus there are certain things where, is it worth putting stock in? I would argue no in some cases. Other people are completely on the other flip side of that think like you should really care about it. And it's a personal preference and opinion, to be honest. But I have found that personally, to me, making plans and going down a path is directionally accurate, as you said.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was a kid, I had a tradition, like a nightly routine of I would like sit on my mom's lap and watch the news.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That was something that like we just did probably Monday through Friday, probably not on the weekends, but we would sit there and watch the news. And now I can't imagine putting my daughter in front of the TV to watch the news. In fact,
No.
whenever that's happened, we're like dismayed by what she sees, right? We don't want this.
Just change the channel.
Yeah. And I gotta wonder like what I was taking in when I was 5, right? I'm not sure really what I saw there, because like, everything, there's always rose-colored glasses, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you watch the news for fun. Like actually sometimes, on election night, I'm like curious. And
it's there's kind like of the best election night. Like even if it doesn't go your way, it's like very exciting.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like it's not a game, it's a competition, whatever it is. But
it's like watching the Super Bowl.
But it's not like I think frequently election nights have been very upsetting. But what I'll do is I'll bounce back and forth between coverages to make it a little bit more entertaining. Right. And I'll watch like this ridiculous map that this person's standing in the middle of to talk about this like one group of voters in Alabama or whatever. Like it's the gamification of it is very silly.
You want to know what election night is like? It's like watching the Super Bowl on several different channels where everybody has a different score.
Yes, everybody has a different score.
Everybody has a different score.
They're commentating on different games.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're cheering for their different fan bases.
Yeah.
And then they have people on the field interviewing the players.
Interviewing the players mid-play. Yeah.
It is. I think it's, I don't know, sometimes it's like maybe a morbid fascination, but I am fascinated by by election night.
I totally agree with you. It is, stepping back, it is kind of fun to watch. When you're in the midst of it, man, does it get heated.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
good times.
But I think back to your point about like, it's not fun. It's not fun. Like,
No,
I don't think anything about the news is fun.
No.
Right?
I don't think anyone turns on the news to have a good time.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
I'm wrong.
but I feel like it's very helpful to understand where people are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So one of the things that I was going to bring up today is actually a client brought up something. He was listening to our podcast and, as is normal for him, he was agreeing with most of the things that we were saying, which I always appreciate.
Yes.
Very positive feedback. But he was like, the thing that you guys were talking about in the history of like the economy, when we went back through
Social Security,
not the Social Security, but like just when we went through the different phases of the U.S. economy.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. He said that's the Polanyi pendulum. And I'm like, that's what now?
I've never heard of this.
I looked up this Polanyi pendulum thing. And it was an idea put forth by a guy named Carl Polanyi.
Of course.
Which makes sense.
Yep.
But essentially, the concept is that markets swing between market liberalization and social protection. Right? So when we talk about the Roaring 20s, right, and the robber barons and everything that was going on there, and then you have the Great Depression, and on the other side of that, you have the New Deal.
Right.
Right? That's essentially it. It's liberalized markets that are essentially unconstrained or less constrained, and then something goes wrong, and then social protection comes in, right? And when you have a situation like we're in right now, where the pendulum might be at an extreme, we might be at like one of those big, economic points in the American history, and we might not,
like the 70s, kind of,
right? The Great Recession,
yeah,
right? If you're at that place, then if we're at an extreme end between marketization and it essentially is saying we're ripe for reversal, right? You have now new movements like the Democratic Socialist Party, right? Which is putting somebody like Mamdani in place to potentially be the mayor of New York as a socialist.
Which is a huge shift.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. And you have these kind of extremes, these things where people move back. You know, when you talk to a lot of people who voted for Trump, they said, well, I just wanted something different, right? Which I always thought was funny because that was the last time we voted for Trump, not the second time you vote for, or the third time in some cases. But and then you talk to the Mamdani voters. Some of the voters will say that they don't necessarily agree with some of his ideas,
but they want something
they
different.
want something different, right? And I think the wanting something different is the point. I think the majority of Americans, while we can't agree on most things or a lot of things, and we're continuing to get divided, we can recognize that maybe we need something different.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'll say, without getting political or anything like that, I do think that the majority of the reason why people voted the way that they voted was to either they didn't want change or they did want change, is the way that I personally look at it. And I think if you're the type of person that looks at a lot of systems right now and views them as being broken, I could see that as you wanting change. You know, like I can resonate with that. If you're in New York, you don't like the way that things are going right now, you're not unhappy with it, of course you're going to want change. And that's a great thing to run on. And you'll probably get a lot of traction with that, to be honest. I think that's probably how Trump got a lot of traction too, is just pointing out, like, if you want change, you know, you want things to be different, like, I'm your guy. Then you had the other side who was just like, things are really good right now, like, let's kind of keep it going type of situation. So that right there splits a huge divide, and you can get voters either way.
Yeah.
Whether they're right or wrong.
I think that was true the first time. I really do. I think that's how he rose to popularity, right? I don't think when I talk to the majority of the people that voted one way or the other, there are a lot of people who voted for Trump that still say they wanted change, right? A lot of people who voted for Kamala weren't trying to keep a status quo. They were fearful of that change that's coming.
Sure.
And it's kind of like they think that there's change that's necessary. It was a type of change that
was the wrong change.
Yeah, that's what they saw, right?
Yeah.
So I think the bottom line is that the country is shape-shifting again right now.
So, okay, so this branches into our conversation that we were talking about having today,
right?
Which is the current view of, I'll say, younger generations, and I guess that includes my generation.
Yeah.
So we'll say millennials and Gen Zers.
Not the old guys like me.
No. Yeah, aren't you a millennial? Are you on the cutoff?
No. We're like in that little bubble where we're not millennials, but we're not Gen X. We're like this special little.
The millennials will adopt you.
No,
I feel like you're at heart. You're young.
I'm young at heart. My Whoop age is very young.
Exactly. According to your Whoop, you are a millennial.
That's fair. Okay.
So a Whoop millennial. That's what you are. Anyway, is it such the case that there is a shifting mindset, especially compared to what was there prior? And I just want to take you through a few different things beforehand. So I did some research on this last night, and I was thinking, what is the difference in terms of people's views of success with money as we go back throughout all prior generations? Not all, but I'll say the last 50 to 60 years.
Okay.
So looking at my parents, you know, the people right before and after then, and then us and younger generations. So 50 years ago in the 1970s, the majority of people thought success with money was stability.
Okay.
So to you, money is stability. Owning a home, having a pension, climbing the corporate ladder, American dream, very predictable. People wanted predictability after World War II. And you saw that because the American dream was sold to basically everybody at the time.
It should look like this.
It should look like this. This is what you want. You know, you want that family, you want the picket fence, you want the house, all that stuff. And that was really sold and had a lot of traction. Fast forwarding, that had a hold for a very long time. Then you had the 90s. So then you had Wall Street, think MTV Cribs. You know?
Yeah.
Money is success at that point. So it was very flashy. You know, you had like Mercedes-Benz and Ferrari and Lamborghini coming out with crazy cars that were selling. Market was booming. It was doing pretty good. So to most people, being rich was just cool. Like that was the goal, was to be rich in the 90s. And then you had like, think about like Vanilla Ice and like that whole Miami phase and everything like that. Then moving on today, I'll say, and I'm curious to get your take on this. I agree with this, that most people, Gen Z and millennials, see money as freedom. It's not just a flex, but it's freedom. So to them, according to this survey, they value experiences more than things, financial independence over status symbols. And that's where we are now. But it's a pretty big shift if you look at the last 50 years.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like a massive shift. You know what's funny though? I look at these things and how I think it's a really good like point of reference when you think about MTV Cribs
Mm-hmm.
and what was that representing, right? And I think there was some sort of, there's a cultural aspect of that where what the rise of hip hop culture can impact the perception of what's cool,
For
right?
sure.
And what you do with your money.
Yeah.
And that was certainly something that you saw in the late 80s into 90s with the rise of Cribs and MTV in general, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you go back to the movies of the 80s, right? As I always go back to movies, but if you go back to movies, when it was put in front of younger audiences, the bad guy was always wealthy, right?
Fair.
And it's not something I was thinking about before this moment, but yeah, the bad guy was always the pop collared polo kid,
rich white guy.
right? The rich white guy,
Yeah.
right? Any of those, the what is it, Pretty in Pink and any
Yeah.
of those type of movies. I feel like maybe there's always been this concept, or maybe not always, but the 80s might be where there was this differentiation of the haves and have-nots, right?
Well, it's almost like what you show people when they're young in the 90s. I'm a 90s baby. I was born in 90.
Yeah.
And what I was shown in 90s has now taken effect for me at 35.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like you sitting on your mom's lap watching the news. You don't know what impact that had, but maybe watching those movies of the pop collar rich white guy,
Mm-hmm.
Is ultimately taking effect with how we feel about money today.
Is that archetype, though, is that somebody that still exists? Do we still villainize wealth to a degree?
Do we villainize wealth? I know I personally don't. Being in our field, I'll say, some of our more successful clients are like some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. And, they're some of the most giving too. I think it's easy to villainize something if maybe you don't understand it, or if you're in a position where you are kind of victimized in a lot of ways, or not victimized. What's the word I'm kind of looking for? Like being put down, like not given the same opportunities.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly which word you're looking for, but I get the concept, right?
Yeah.
It's that you're, now I'm trying to find the word that's inside your brain, but that's not an appropriate exercise. So I'm going to move on. So,
don't bother. It'll take too long.
But I think that I'll ask you a question that I frequently get asked. And by frequently, I mean occasionally by the same people over and over again. But
I'm excited.
The question is, should billionaires exist?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
I do think billionaires should exist because, in my opinion, now keep in mind, I think a billionaire should exist because that means the way in which you got $1 billion to me is different.
Mm-hmm.
If you are the person that just inherited $50 billion and you're going out and partying and doing all that kind of stuff, like you haven't built anything, that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you've built a company that's employed 100,000 people, given back, provided products to the economy, that's done a lot of good, moved on society, then yeah, I think you should benefit from the revenue that your company created. So to me, it's not necessarily whether or not billionaires should exist. It's the way in which the billionaires receive their money. And to Jess's point, when we were talking about capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm all for people making money. I think they should make money unless it detracts or hurts the common person.
Yeah. And I think most people that feel like billionaires shouldn't exist. And by the way, I think that's a trick question because it's no shoulds. Like that's like,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Is it okay that they exist? I think it's yes. I agree with you that to a certain extent, the American dream was built on potential prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
It was never built on there's a ceiling to your prosperity. There's a ceiling to your potential, because that's the antithesis of what we are as a country originally, and I think what we are today. So I don't think we should put a ceiling on people, and that therefore means that what used to be the millionaire, the multimillionaire, the 100-millionaire became the billionaire,
and it will eventually be the trillionaire.
It will probably be the trillionaire because of inflation and growth, et cetera. That will happen. I think what people are doing when they're asking that question is they're focusing on what that person did to reach that wealth. Was it fair always along the way?
Yeah.
And should ultimately the wealth be so concentrated in one place over the other, right?
Yeah, I think ultimately when you have concentrated wealth, it's going to continue to grow and scale. So it's really difficult to trim that down. Like if you've got $100 million, a 6% rate of growth for you means that, what is that, divided by 72? So call that, we'll say 12 years. So in 12 years, your 100 million becomes 200, and then another 12 years after that becomes 4, then call it $1 billion. But when you have that concentration, compound growth is going to take care of it to a certain extent.
Right. And I think that's kind of leading to why we have this K-shaped economy that we're in right now. I feel like we're at this point where you're either a stock owner or you're not to some degree. It's right. The haves and the have-nots have been amplified more than ever before in history, not just because we all of a sudden have people who have $1 billion, but there were always, as we discussed, there's always been like wealthy people in this country. They weren't technically oligarchs, but we've always had very wealthy, very powerful people. We've always had disparity, and there have been times where that shrunk, but it was never equal, right? We were never all the same. The problem is though, the gap is the widest really that it's ever been. And it's the most in your face it's ever been.
Okay.
And we need to have, we have this just kind of constant reminder, if you don't have money, that you don't have money.
And that would make you resentful.
Yeah.
Last night, Kaylee and I were chatting. She is looking for an assistant because she's taking on more and more clients, and it's an LNA, licensed nursing assistant, is what she's searching for. Yeah. And the hospital that she works for is having a very, very hard time getting LNAs because they have to go to school for it. So it's not a big program. I think it's like 3 months. But you have to go to school for it. You're trained on it. And then, they follow Kaylee into all the appointments. They do the notes. They help her with the procedures, all this stuff. And that's great. They are starting the LNAs at the hospital. And her boss came in and mentioned this to her the other day, that she was just like, we're never going to find anyone for this position. Kaylee was like, why not? She goes, because you can make more at Dunkin' Donuts.
Really?
And she was just like, I literally just got my coffee this morning. They're offering $20 an hour. We're paying less than that. And I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this and I'm like, how is that possible that $20 an hour is like what we're paying someone in the healthcare sector in Dunkin' Donuts? I mean, Dunkin' Donuts, like, I don't know anything about like kind of the work there or anything like that. But if you're in that position, like, I could totally see you being resentful. Like, if you went to do this program, you're trying to get ahead, you're trying to get into healthcare, and then you come out and you're making less than you are at a fast food chain, why do it?
Right.
And I could see someone being like, yeah, I don't think billionaires should exist.
I think that's the thing. Yeah, resentment. There's a certain amount of schadenfreude involved too. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want you to be successful because I'm not successful.
And I can't get there.
Right. Now, we're not billionaires, right?
No,
I have already said on this podcast, I'm not likely to ever be a billionaire.
Ditto.
But, I can certainly put us in the haves and not the have-nots. Mm-hmm. I think if you're honestly just like reflecting on the fact that we are business owners, we're invested in the stock market, right? We're two white men living in America, and we live in New England, which is a pretty good part of the country to live in.
Right.
Right. We're really well off, all things considered.
Yep.
I think when you look at my start was too much student loan debt, right? Coming from a single income home, not like we were not well off at all. We were lower middle class, and I've worked my way up, and I'm very fortunate. You mentioned earlier in the podcast that whenever you put a plan in place, things tend to work out. And that's why you've adopted that mentality of put a plan in place and go down that path. So it's easy to see from our standpoint why we wouldn't have a problem with like wealth and inequality in the country. Like you could say, well, things are working out. I don't really see what the problem is, right? But I can also recognize the fact that if you are a young person starting today and you took on all those student loans to go get that job at the hospital, and now you're not being compensated enough for those student loans. You know, they say, I've heard this a number of times, but you know, age 18, you can't buy a beer, but here's $200,000 in student loan debt.
Yeah, and a car loan.
Right, and a car loan too. So, you know, we burden people with debt very early on. Then we don't pay them enough money to live where they want to live. And you get a situation like we have in New York, where we haven't elected a socialist mayor yet in New York, but he's the front runner for the Democratic Party. Yeah, it's really looking that way. And you can see why people are disenchanted. You can see why they feel like a change needs to come and everything is stacked up against them. And they have to point the finger somewhere because that's just human nature. And so they point the finger at either wealth or, you know, the party that they don't agree with,
right?
Which frequently is tied together, right?
Yeah.
Like it's, you know, the Republicans, Democrats, both of them have a lot of money behind them, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could say one party is the billionaires' party, but studies have shown that that's pretty equal across the board.
There's a lot of influential, very wealthy people on both sides, and the whole political system kind of sucks.
It does. Well, what is it now? Like $150 million is what it costs to run a decent presidential campaign. That's not even to win, but that's just what it costs.
So how is anybody supposed to pay for that?
You don't,
right?
Unless you're well off or you have very, very well off friends.
You have influential backers.
Correct.
And they have needs that need to be met if they're going to pay for your presidential campaign.
You want to know what's interesting about this? And I've thought about this, and I think we've chatted about this before, but there's a problem with wealth now, which is visibility. And to me, like, the internet has done a lot to decentralize the way that we can make money. People can come online now, become influencers, or do drop shipping, or figure out ways to make money online, and that's fantastic. However, at the same time, it can also be a little poisonous and discouraging. Like if you are someone who's trying to get ahead and working really hard, and then you hop on your TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, then you see a young person who's maybe doing things on the internet that they're not supposed to, and they're making millions and millions of dollars.
Yep.
And then you're like, I feel like crap about myself because why aren't I in this position? Should I just go and do this? And I think the visibility of the internet and kind of what it's pushing forward really skews people's expectations of reality. And when we talk through this with a lot of our clients who have been very successful, they never got wealthy quickly. You know, it took a very, very long time for them to get wealthy.
Yeah.
Now the expectation is that everybody's rich and in their 20s and 30s and driving G-Wagons and making a ton of money and flying in these fancy planes. And it's unfortunate that the framework that people have right now for their money and their life and everything might be a little askew.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's damaging, right? It certainly can influence the way that you think you should live, right? You should see yourself in their shoes. But at the same time, it's easy to create or make social media or the internet a scapegoat, when in reality, we do have a faltering system. I mean, we can talk about the jobs data and whether it's reliable data or not, but it's the same data. It's always been there. They counted it the same way. Yep. It's always been done the same way. Nothing changed there.
Nothing changed.
And just because we didn't like the data, we can't just like pretend it doesn't exist. It exists. And the data, looking back, shows that we have fewer job openings, fewer hirings, and that we have, I think it was like 30,000 people a month, job openings created a month over the last 3 months on average.
Yep.
That's the type of number you see in or around a recession. Yet, if you look at the stock market, it's at all-time highs.
And it keeps going up.
Right? Because we've got this K-shaped economy. Yep. And what I didn't know, what I realized recently, is that there were, I think it was 22% there was a 22% increase in business bankruptcies last year, year over year.
Interesting.
Now, that's not like the highest it's ever been. The highest it's ever been was like 2009.
Just in 2024 in general, that was the
2024 up from 2023.
Okay.
The highest since 2017. Most of those are smaller businesses.
Yeah.
Right. So we understand in our positions that owning a business is often a good way, a reliable way to increase wealth. Right. A lot of business owners that we've worked with increase their wealth via owning a business.
Right.
Right. But if that's not working, if it's harder to do that now, and it's easier to just latch on to, corporate America and stock options and playing that game instead, you can easily see how people who would have owned a business in the past and aren't anymore, or they business failed, or it's not even just like the internet or social media impacting the way they see the world. It's literally their life experience.
Yeah. I often have friends come up to me and say, oh, I want to start this business or something like that, or they have this idea. And I'm always like, don't do it.
Okay.
Like, don't do it. Don't start a business. Because A, it's incredibly risky. 2, it's extremely expensive. Everybody always underestimates the cost. And I don't know if this is true or not, but my guess is probably what happened with a lot of those businesses is they probably came out when rates were low. Like a lot of them probably launched when rates were low, and it probably became increasingly expensive to run that business over time, which probably caused them to close their doors. A lot of people were expecting rates to drop last year, and a lot of people were expecting rates to drop even before then, which they never did. The rates have pretty much been completely unchanged for the last year and a half. So if you were expecting that, and if you were relying on that to take out a loan or to hire more staff or whatever it might be, it's extremely expensive to do that now. So for me, I think personally, if you want to be successful, I think the stock option game, having good habits, developing a good plan, saving, doing all the right things will absolutely get you there. You don't have to start a business. But I think the internet often romanticizes a lot of things about business owners and startups and everything like that, which I think is fantastic. But with that being said, it is risky. It is expensive. It's going to take up a lot of your time. There's going to be heartache probably in it too. It's tough on families. It's tough on marriages.
Yeah.
And like, you have to be prepared for that. And if it doesn't work, was it worth it? Because if your outcome that you're trying to receive, going back to the outcome, like if you're really just trying to do this to be wealthy, there are other ways to do it now. And just like you were just saying with the stock option game and all these other things, like, can you get into a great company? But right now it is tough. Not many companies are hiring like they used to be.
I don't even think, I hear your point about the number of influencers out there that make things look better than they are, or they make things look easy. I don't think the majority of people are even trying to be wealthy at this point. I think they're just trying to feel less poor.
Well, yeah, I think what most people probably want, according to this, and I agree with it. I mean, most of the young people that we're talking to now are getting to a point where they just want to be financially independent.
Yeah.
Like, that's really, I think, what people want.
Yeah.
And
we had a new client come in who just finished, was it veterinarian school, right? She had $400,000 in debt.
Yep.
And she's making decent money, but she wants to buy a house. And she wants to pay off these student loans, and she wants to save to her retirement, and she literally can't do it all. We were unable to open an account for her, and I just said, let's just focus on like building out a debt repayment plan and figuring your way out of this. Because by the way, most of these loans are in forbearance, and you're not even paying on interest right now. She had $400,000 in student loan debt, and her monthly payment was $148.
Yeah.
It's not going to,
I
ran the calculation and I was like, said, hey, ChatGPT, how long is it going to take to pay off the loans? And ChatGPT was like, I can't calculate that.
This is impossible.
You can't do that.
You don't.
Yeah. We were talking, Tori and I were talking before you got in today about salaried positions versus hourly positions, because now that you don't have to pay taxes up to a certain income limit on your overtime income,
right?
Maybe being hourly is a little bit more of a benefit. And frequently, salaried positions for entry level positions are, overworking people, really trying to get as much productivity out of them as you can. And you're getting them some basic bare bones benefits that they don't really need. Like, hey, here's healthcare insurance. And you're like, well, I'm 22. I'm really healthy. This is probably the one time in my life that I don't necessarily need healthcare.
Right.
No, I think everybody should have healthcare. But I think that it's an easy, affordable benefit to offer. For, I don't want to call it slave labor, but it's very, very
minimally paid labor. Which, by the way, even the slaves in Rome were paid. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Being a slave in Rome, you still received a salary.
Really?
Yep.
Well, that's kind of like when you're in jail, you make money, but like,
right.
Not a lot.
Not really.
You get like a penny a license plate or whatever it might be. That's not a real stat. Don't quote me on that. But I think it's going back to the ultimate question here: is wealth inherently evil? I don't think it is. I think that the systems, this K-shaped economy that we're living in right now, it started in '08, really, more than any time I think before then, because that's where we kind of recreated this monetary system, and we bailed out we made corporate America the safest place to be.
Totally.
Right.
Absolutely.
And now, if you want to play the game, as we like to say, that's to your point, the safest path.
Yeah.
And that isn't available to everybody.
It's not.
I told you my fridge broke, right?
Yes.
So going back to that renovation from 4 years ago, I have a brand new fridge and it's not cooling in the fridge.
Just out of warranty.
Right? Actually, it turns out it's within like the 5-year internal cooling system warranty.
Oh, perfect.
It's actually what's kind of screwing me over right now because I don't want to pay for this repair, so I'm going through the warranty. But GE, who provided the fridge, I scheduled an appointment with them. This stuff happened after I talked to you, so you don't know all this yet. So Sunday evening, I spend hours trying to figure out what's going on with my fridge. I eventually say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to call for help, right? So I can't do that on Sunday because it's a Sunday. So Monday, even though this is a conglomerate, they don't have anybody to help you on Sunday evenings or any time except for Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 Eastern.
Despite the fact that they're employing hundreds of thousands of people globally.
Well, the problem is they're not employing enough because I schedule an appointment the earliest on Monday morning. I schedule an appointment the earliest time that they can get somebody out there to fix my fridge is Thursday, right? I'm sitting here with you guys at work on Monday afternoon. I get an email. Thank you for rescheduling your appointment.
I didn't reschedule my appointment.
What are you talking about? And they pushed it out to next Tuesday. Right? So I'm like, okay.
It'll be fine.
So I go back online because I spent 45 minutes trying to talk to somebody to see if this was under warranty and like schedule an appointment. Never happened. So I had to go online to do this because I couldn't get through like the chat phone bot.
Yep.
So I go online, I schedule an appointment for Friday, right? And then I get another response. The tech in your area is on vacation. You cannot get serviced this week. And I said, well, that's not going to cut it. And also, by the way, I'm not home next week. This is our one family vacation to the cabin up that we're doing this summer. So I'm not there. I can't get this fixed next week. But because there's one tech in the service area, there's nobody else that can help me. It's GE. It's a massive company. Now they're partnering with a smaller company to actually provide the service. But they can't get somebody. Now, I'm in a good situation where I have a backup fridge. Like I have the fridge in our basement that like we keep our, freezer stuff or like my beer or like just like backup stuff. So I can handle the situation and I'm fine. I spent 45 minutes on the phone with them yesterday, seeing if I could kind of push up this service to some point where actually it helps me. And it got nowhere except for finally they said, yeah, this is a really bad situation. We're really sorry. Would you like a coupon for a mini fridge? I'm like, your solution for me
is me to buy more stuff from you.
Yes. Like here's a discount on another product that we're going to sell you that is not really going to help. So again, I'm in a better position. I can navigate this fine. A lot of people can't wait a week for a refrigerator to work. They can't afford to go out to dinner instead. They can't afford for all this food to go
those groceries that they just bought are now spoiled.
Yeah, so all that paycheck's out the window. And the solution is to go buy another fridge at a discounted price that isn't going to fit all the stuff that they really even need. It's like a college dorm fridge.
Yeah. That's rough. That's a
So,
pretty terrible customer experience.
and they can't afford, it's GE, so they can afford to hire a different tech or
They'll be
whatever.
fine.
But maybe they can't find one. Maybe there aren't enough techs.
It's very possible. Well, I mean, we talk about this going back to the trade schools. I mean, if you really want to make a lot of money, go into the trades right now. I mean,
It seems pretty reliable.
it seems like a pretty reliable bet at the moment. There's a shortage of electricians, shortage of woodworkers. Like I was talking with the guy that's building our kitchen cabinets. He has like 7 jobs right now that he's working on, and they're like, my house is tiny in compared to like all these other ones, and he's just like a 3-man shop, and he just bought a warehouse, and I mean, he's been doing the woodworking for like 10 years now, but this is someone who's probably making like an exorbitant amount of money,
Yeah.
building cabinets, and like you can find ways to make it work, because we talked about this too, like, you know, Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's and these jobs that are paying $20, they weren't meant to be career defining jobs.
Right.
They were meant to be jumping off points.
They're holding points. They're helping you pay the bills while you figure out the next thing, ideally.
Exactly. Yeah. I sent you a video last week.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yep.
I'm a big YouTube guy, as you know, and there was a video that I thought was very interesting, and I'm glad you watched it, where there were 20 Gen Zers.
This calls, yeah.
Gen Zers.
Yeah.
They were like early to mid 20s, and they were in a room, and the guy who started Morgan and Morgan, I believe it was, the huge law firm, he's worth several $billion, was sitting in a chair, and they all were standing around him, and they were all able to ask him one question.
And the positioning was he was sitting in front of them, so with his back to them. Yeah.
So he couldn't see behind. And I would encourage anyone that's interested in this to go check it out on YouTube. I thought it was very interesting. What were your takeaways?
My takeaways were that there was a lot of disparity in the questions.
Yeah.
There were people who it didn't matter what he said. Their minds went in before. But at the same time, while I agreed with a lot of like the policies that the Morgan and Morgan guy laid out, I also found him to be a little disconnected, because he was like, I don't really, spend an exorbitant amount of money. I mean, I guess my private jet is a little bit of a luxury. I'm like, well, it's not just your private jet. It's that $5,000 suit you're wearing. It's your house in Maui.
3 houses. Yeah.
Your house,
and the
your house
jet.
in New Hampshire, exactly. And plus, it's, I think that one of those guys said like, well, billionaires are all bad, but he's like the lesser of the billionaires or whatever it might be. I think he's a person, and he has a lot of opinions, and he's done things that I agree with and done things that I disagree with, right? But the majority of the people who went into that conversation, I think, went in there expecting to like spit roast a billionaire.
Right.
And maybe it was harder to do that when they saw that he was a person.
I think, to me, something that really came across was that people came in there with an agenda.
Yeah, sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, people had already come in there forming an opinion, and which brings me back to, I wonder where they got that opinion from.
Right.
And when you come in there having an opinion, and the person is, I'll say he was a pretty nice guy. He had good responses to the majority of the questions. Was he out of touch? Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this. This was a long time ago, but I think it was Bill Gates who was on Ellen DeGeneres. Maybe it was Oprah, but she was quizzing him on how expensive things were.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever see this?
No, but I've seen variations of it.
Of it. And she was just like, okay, how much is a gallon of milk?
Yeah.
And he was like, 18 cents.
They did that scene in Succession, basically.
Yes, they did. But, of course these people are going to be out of touch.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't expect him to necessarily know these things.
Sure.
But I think, to me, if you became a billionaire tomorrow, I wouldn't think of you as a bad person. And in the
just because I'm a billionaire.
Just because you're a billionaire.
Agreed.
And in the same way that if these people were friends who were interviewing this Morgan and Morgan guy, like if one of them became a billionaire, that wouldn't also make them a bad person. I think the expectation is, though, that in this day and age, like a lot of people just see money and hate it. And maybe that's a wrong assumption, but from what I saw in that video, that's what really came across to me, is like people kind of came in with preconceived notions, which of course you're going to have your own opinions on things.
Yeah.
But that was a little bit fascinating to me. And I think most of them did walk away exactly to your point, saying this is an actual person.
Well, I think sometimes people are just the personification of the problem, right? And there is a problem. I think we can all acknowledge that there's wealth inequality in this country and a lot of people are struggling. And it's not just that they can pick themselves up by their bootstraps and solve their own problems,
Right.
but it doesn't make everybody just wants to point fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to feel guilty because I've worked hard to put myself in a position for success financially, right? But I also am going to feel the more money I make, the more I'm going to want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that you've talked about a couple of times in this podcast, and it's what the Morgan and Morgan guy talked about as well. But there's only so much we can do individually. There's only so much that billionaire can do, and he can do a lot more than me, but it's still limited because it's a societal, national issue that needs to be solved. And every time we see, a socialist get elected mayor or something like that, that's meant to address local problems, but those local problems are just smaller versions of a national issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the system that's the problem. It's not the people that necessarily benefit from the system. There are people that benefit from the system for sure that help create it.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, you have crippling student debt, cost of living has absolutely exploded, job security is gone, social media makes comparisons constant.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all of those things going on. They watch their parents kind of sacrifice everything, when they were growing up to get ahead. I know when I was growing up, my dad worked very hard to get ahead, but he wasn't around. He was working 60 hours a week and on Saturdays too, majority of my time was spent with my mom.
Yeah.
Growing up. And I'm not upset about it, because we were very fortunate that he worked really hard. But still, with that being said, you have your parents that worked really hard and then they got laid off in 2008. Mm-hmm. So they lost their job security, and then you're back to square one on the corporate ladder again. So you have that going on too. And then you have a lot of people upset on the political climate. So I understand why the framework feels broken right now. And I could see you being discouraged. But there are ways, I'll say, to get ahead. And it just may not be the traditional way that people thought of before in the past.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I feel like we've sat here today and we've kind of talked about a lot of problems, identified problems, and we've talked about why people feel a certain way, but we're not positing solutions. And I think this is something that we kind of run into a lot. When mm-hmm. you hear people talk about things, you hear Bernie Sanders talk about things, or you hear, I'm not sure, I try not to listen to some other people talk about things, but in general, you hear solutions occasionally from either side, but they're short-sighted. They're not playing the second and third derivative, just like we've talked about. They are ripe for, unintended consequences. And at the same time, if you look at this country right now, if this country was a product or a service or just a company, right, you would look at this from the outside looking in and you'd say, well, that's ripe for disruption.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So let me ask you this. If you weren't a financial advisor, let's say something happened, financial advisory ceased to exist tomorrow.
Yeah.
What would you do?
What's interesting? I think that answer changes a lot. I think it's, how much do you want to take on?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was talking about this with Jess last week, if you were to go into politics, let's say I went into politics, right? I am putting my family at risk. I am setting up my wife and my daughter for a lot of disruption,
sure.
criticism, even perhaps bigger risks. You put yourself out there, the nail gets hammered,
mm-hmm.
right?
The nail that sticks out gets hammered.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that that's the situation that we're in politically right now. And it hasn't always been that way. So while I would like to say I'll go into politics and try to help, I think the system.
You don't have money, though.
I don't have the money either. So I think we'd have to reform campaign.
Yeah.
But I don't have the money and I don't have the influence. So I'm not going to be able to make that difference. But maybe I'd try to focus something a little bit more local and start somewhere.
So would you start a business or would you join a company?
I would probably not start a business.
Yeah.
I wouldn't join a company either. I don't, I feel like I don't have a business idea. So I'm not going to start a business just for starting a business. Right. I don't know. You?
I would go into the trades. I would. I would like to learn it. I would probably learn a skill that people need and that find valuable and that's not easily replaceable. And that's what I would lean into. And I think when I've talked to young people, that's usually the advice that I give them.
Yeah.
A lot of people go into tech and programming and things like that, and that's fantastic. But if that's where everybody's going, maybe you should go somewhere else.
I think it's a good point. And I think that the face of technology and that type of opportunity is changing. I think your answer is very like productive. It's basically like, well, I need to get money and I need to solve for a problem, so I'm going to go find a job. Whereas mine is a little bit like, man, everything sucks. And I don't mean to come across that way. I do feel like I'm just trying to understand what's happening and why it's happening and where people are coming from. And it's worthwhile to me to hear those stories out and to follow along, because otherwise we can become disconnected. I don't think our practice is going away tomorrow, like you've posited. So it's more probable than not that we are going to continue to be financially successful in the system that's been set up for us. If we continue to invest in the market's going to go along doing its thing. It's going to correct at some point. It might go into a prolonged bear market, and then it will continue doing its thing again. That's the country that we're living in right now until something changes. So we're playing the game the right way. My concern is really how you help people who aren't in a position to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with most of it. What I will say is I think that we are going to be in this framework for a long time, and I think it's set up in a way that obviously the people who created it and the people who are at the top are going to want it to continue.
Yeah,
because it benefits them. So if you can get into it, and I'm not saying go buy a home, but if you can invest in the stock market, you can put some things in place so you can benefit from compounding growth. There could be a recession right around the corner tomorrow, but we'll come out of it, and there will be continued growth. So
yeah.
With that being said, there is that aspect of it. But if you do feel as if you're in a rut, maybe it is time for a change, and whatever that change might look like, it might be out of the box. If something was to happen tomorrow and if I wasn't able to do this, I don't know exactly what I would do, but that's where I would probably start. Is I would probably try to think of some things that people really need that are in short supply, and then I would try to go and leverage that. Perfect example, a GE technician.
Yes, I think there's an opportunity there, for sure.
When it comes down to it, sometimes it requires out-of-box thinking if you're really trying to get ahead. And some of the people that we have and we've seen have fallen into businesses and opportunities that they never originally set out to be in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, even though people have different options in front of them, right? Different resources that they can lean on. But whatever resources you have to try to marshal them to work on your behalf. And I think one of the best things that we can do right now is recognize that stocks are working right now. Mm-hmm. This is not investment advice, but if you have long-term plans, then stocks are likely going to continue to be a good way to solve for those plans. If you're worried about an economy or a country that is ripe for disruption, then maybe set some of those resources, if you can, towards something a little bit more securely reliable on a day-to-day basis. I think the near-term liquidity is what's going to be the most important thing for people over the next couple of years, and let the long-term problems work themselves out, because you've got time to let them work themselves out.
Yeah, and just make sure your cash is earning interest.
Yeah.
High-yield savings accounts. Don't put it in an area where it's earning zero, please.
Yeah, don't do that. And don't do that in your Roth IRA.
No, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, all.
That wraps up episode 15 of Compound Growth. Today we covered a lot of ground. From why the trades may be the future of our economy, to imagining the paths we might have taken if we weren't in financial advising. We explored how calls for change often lead to seeking the exact opposite of the status quo, and what those major shifts can mean for the country as it continues to shapeshift. And perhaps most importantly, we unpacked how the younger generation is redefining what wealth looks like, and what that could mean for the generations to come. Thanks for joining us in the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and keep the dialogue going. Until next time, keep growing in more ways than one.
Compound Growth with Wheeler and Colin. Sponsored by Ko-Fi Advisors. Reach out today. Yay!